10 years had passed since Amina's husband, Imran, had died. Their home, a modest two-story house at the edge of the village, had grown quiet in his absence. Friends had drifted away, and neighbors visited less often. Amina, now in her early 40s, spent her days tending to the garden and her nights sitting by the fireplace, staring at the photographs of a life that once was. Her husband had been a gentle man, full of laughter and kindness. But 10 years ago, a sudden illness had taken him, leaving Amina alone with memories and a house filled with silence. She had learned to live with the emptiness, but the house had started to feel strange. It began subtly. Footsteps that didn't belong to anyone, a cold draft from walls that should have been sealed, faint noises in the middle of the night. At first, she dismissed them as her imagination. But as months passed, her curiosity grew. One afternoon, as she cleaned the attic, she noticed a small crack in the living room wall. It had been hidden behind a tall bookshelf, unnoticed for years. She stepped closer, brushing away the dust. Her fingers traced the edges of the crack. Something about it felt different. Not just an ordinary wall, but a barrier hiding something. Amina fetched a hammer and cautiously tapped along the crack. At first, the wall seemed solid, but then she heard a faint hollow sound. Her heart raced. Could it really be? Was there something behind it all these years? She pushed the bookshelf aside and began to chip at the plaster. Dust filled the air, and the sound of breaking stone echoed through the empty house. Hours passed, and finally, a small opening appeared. A narrow, dark cavity revealed itself, long hidden from view. Amina hesitated. She should have stopped. She should have called someone. But curiosity, an emotion stronger than fear, pushed her forward. She crouched, peering into the darkness. There, just out of reach, something glimmered. A faint shimmer, almost like light reflecting off gold. Her hand trembled as she reached inside. The object was solid, yet delicate. She pulled it out slowly, brushing off layers of dust and debris. What she held made her gasp. A small, intricately carved box, bound with a rusted clasp. It looked ancient, far older than the house itself. With a mix of fear and excitement, she carried the box to the kitchen table. Hands shaking, she opened it. Inside lay a collection of papers, carefully folded and preserved. Handwritten notes, photographs, and strange symbols filled the pages. Among them was a letter addressed to her, but written in her husband's hand. The letter began simply, "Amina, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. But there are things you must know, things I could never tell you. This house, our life, is not what it seems." Amina's breath caught. She had expected memories, old letters perhaps, but nothing like this. Her mind raced. What secrets had Imran hidden? And why only now, 10 years after his death, had they revealed themselves? Outside, the wind blew through the trees, whispering against the windows. Amina felt as if the house itself were alive, holding its breath, waiting for her next move. She sat back, staring at the papers, heart pounding. Her life, the quiet existence she had grown accustomed to, was about to change forever. Amina spent that night awake, the letter clutched in her hands. She read and reread it, trying to understand Imran's words. The handwriting, familiar and comforting, now carried an edge of mystery that made her stomach tighten. "There are things about this house you must know. Things about my family, about us, that I could never share. You are safe now, but one day, you will need to know the truth." The letter hinted at an inheritance of knowledge, a hidden past, and a responsibility she had never imagined. She looked around the living room, at the ordinary furniture and familiar walls, and realized she had been living in a house that had more to it than met the eye. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows as Amina set the box on the kitchen table. She opened the first page carefully. The papers were covered in her husband's handwriting, neat and precise. Some were journals, others sketches of rooms she had never seen. A faint smell of old paper filled the air as she sifted through them. One sheet drew her attention. It was a map of the house, but not the house she knew. It had secret passages, small chambers, and hidden doors. And there, marked in a corner of the attic, was a room she had never discovered, even after 10 years of living here. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Her mind raced. Could this hidden room be connected to the hollow behind the wall she had broken? She remembered the box and its contents, the strange symbols, and the letters. Everything seemed part of a puzzle she was only beginning to understand. As days passed, Amina explored the house more carefully. She followed the map, comparing it with the actual structure. The hidden wall, the tiny attic space, even the basement, everything had a secret she had never noticed. She discovered a latch behind a loose floorboard, revealing a small, narrow staircase leading downward. The air smelled damp and earthy, carrying the weight of decades of secrecy. With trembling hands, she descended. The steps creaked under her weight, but nothing else moved. At the bottom, she found a stone chamber, barely lit by the tiny crack of light from the staircase. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The chamber was lined with shelves, stacked with old books, jars, and more boxes like the one she had found. Amina reached for one of the jars. Inside, she found dried herbs, powders, and old coins. Some of the books were filled with strange scripts she didn't recognize, diagrams of unknown symbols, and drawings of landscapes she had never seen. Her fingers shook as she turned a page, revealing a photograph. Her heart stopped. It was a young Imran, smiling, but with a look in his eyes she had never seen. Behind him, an older man stood, a man Amina did not recognize, wearing traditional robes and holding a staff. Something about the image made her feel as though she were staring at history itself, a past hidden in shadows. Among the papers, she found another note from Imran. This chamber holds the truth about our family. The world outside cannot know, and you must be careful. Everything you thought you knew is only the beginning. Trust no one except what you see here. Fear and excitement twisted inside her. Who could she trust? Her friends and neighbors? The mailman? Even the local authorities? The house, the hidden chamber, and these papers were hers alone to understand. That night, Amina sat in the chamber, surrounded by books and boxes. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. She opened another book and found it filled with stories of her husband's ancestors, men and women who had lived lives of mystery and purpose. They had guarded secrets, powers, or knowledge she could barely comprehend. For the first time in 10 years, Amina felt a spark of life she had not felt since Imran died. She was no longer alone in grief. She was alone in discovery. And what she was about to learn could change everything, about her husband, her family, and herself. But the chamber also held warnings. Some symbols glowed faintly, almost as if alive. The air felt charged, electric, like it held memories of past generations. Amina realized that this was more than a hidden room, it was a legacy, a burden and a gift waiting for her to embrace. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. She could ignore it, leave the secrets buried. But her heart would not allow it. The truth demanded to be seen. And as she reached for the next box, a sound echoed through the chamber, a soft, deliberate knock, as if someone, or something, knew she was there. Amina froze. Her heart raced. She was no longer certain that she was completely alone. Amina's hands trembled as she stared at the small knocking sound. The chamber was silent again. She told herself it was the wind, or her imagination, but her heart refused to settle. The house seemed alive in a way she had never noticed, as though it had been waiting for this moment for 10 long years. Shaking off the fear, she returned to the box. There were more papers, more photographs, and finally, a small key tied to a faded ribbon. Amina held it up to the light. It was delicate, old, and seemed important. The note accompanying it simply read, "This unlocks what you were always meant to see. Follow the path with care." She looked at the map again, comparing it with the key's inscription. It pointed toward the wall she had uncovered months ago, the one that had first revealed the hidden box. Could there be something even deeper, hidden beyond that space? Amina moved cautiously to the living room, clearing the debris from the broken wall. The hollow behind it was dark and narrow, barely enough for her to squeeze through. Her pulse quickened. She took a deep breath, slid the key into a small slot embedded in the wall, and turned it. With a quiet click, a section of the wall shifted. A narrow staircase descended into complete darkness. She grabbed a flashlight, held her breath, and stepped down. The air was colder here, carrying the scent of earth and something faintly metallic. Each step brought a sense of anticipation, fear, and excitement, an intoxicating mix that made her feel alive for the first time in years. At the bottom, she entered a larger room, hidden entirely from the world. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, jars, and artifacts, far more than she had imagined. In the center was a table, and on it, an open book with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Amina realized this room was no ordinary hidden chamber. It was a library of secrets, carefully preserved by her husband and perhaps generations before him. She picked up one of the books and turned the pages. There were records of her husband's travels, the people he had met, and events she had never known about. Among the documents, she found a diary belonging to Imran. His words were meticulous, filled with both love and caution. Amina, if you have reached this, then the time has come for you to know. Our family has always protected knowledge that others would misuse. I lived a life in quiet, balancing the ordinary with the extraordinary. You must continue this path, carefully, but bravely. There is more than grief in this world, and there is more than safety in ignorance. Her mind reeled. For 10 years, she had lived unaware of the truth of her husband's life. Imran had not just been her partner, he had been a guardian, protecting secrets and knowledge that could have changed the world, or destroyed it. A sudden realization struck her. The photographs she had seen earlier, the man in the robes, the landscapes, the strange symbols, were not just historical curiosities. They were part of a system, a lineage, and a responsibility. And now, it was hers. Her hands shook as she read further. Instructions, diagrams, and coded messages outlined a legacy meant to be passed down carefully. Imran had hidden it to protect her, to give her time to grieve and heal, but the moment had come for Amina to step into a role she had never expected. Suddenly, a shadow flickered across the far wall. She turned quickly, shining the flashlight, but the room appeared empty. Her pulse raced. Was someone, or something, else here? She reminded herself that the house had always felt alive, and perhaps this too was part of the experience, a test of courage and resolve. Determined, Amina continued to explore. She opened another box and found a series of letters written to her from unknown sources. They described events in the village, the movements of people who had once been close to her, and warnings about those who might seek to misuse the knowledge her husband had protected. Her mind was spinning. Fear tried to creep in, but it was matched by a fierce determination. She realized that for 10 years, she had been living in the shadow of a hidden world. And now, it was no longer a shadow, she was part of it. Amina sat down, breathing deeply, taking in the weight of responsibility. She was not the same woman who had broken open a wall months ago. That woman had been curious, grieving, and cautious. The woman now was determined, aware, and ready to face whatever came next. The house seemed to hum around her, almost approvingly, as if acknowledging her understanding. She carefully organized the papers and books, mapping out the knowledge, preparing herself for the journey ahead. And then, at the very end of the table, she found a final note from Imran, almost hidden beneath a stack of journals. Amina, you are ready. You may be frightened, but remember, our family's strength is in courage and wisdom. The world may never understand, but you must protect what is hidden. This is your life now, as it was always meant to be. Tears filled her eyes. The grief that had consumed her for 10 years transformed into a powerful resolve. She had lost her husband, but she had gained purpose. And in the quiet of the hidden room, Amina understood that her life, the life she had known, was over. A new chapter had begun, one filled with mystery, courage, and a truth she would carry forever. Amina sat in the hidden chamber for hours, the candlelight flickering against the walls lined with books and boxes. The reality of her discovery weighed heavily on her. She had spent 10 years in grief, believing her husband's life had ended quietly with his passing, but now she understood the truth. Imran had lived a life hidden in plain sight, guarding secrets that could change everything. She looked around the room again. Every shelf, every box, every parchment contained a fragment of a world she had never known. There were journals detailing events she could barely comprehend, sketches of lands far beyond her village, and letters from people she had never met. They spoke of a lineage, a duty, and knowledge that had been carefully preserved over generations. Amina reached for one of the oldest journals. The leather cover was worn, and the pages smelled faintly of herbs and dust. She opened it and saw her husband's neat handwriting, describing events from years before she had even met him. There were accounts of secret meetings, hidden societies, and guardians of knowledge. Imran had not only been a man of the ordinary world, but also a protector of something extraordinary. Her hands trembled as she read further. A passage caught her eye. The knowledge we guard is not for power or fame. It is for protection, for balance. Those who seek it without understanding bring destruction. It is a heavy burden, but one that must be carried. Amina, one day you will understand the importance of this responsibility. I trust you to be the one to continue this legacy. Amina's heart raced. Could she really take on such a responsibility? She was just a woman who had tended a garden, cooked meals, and lived quietly for 10 years. But as she looked at the writings, a spark of understanding ignited within her. Imran had believed in her, even when she had doubted herself. She moved carefully through the chamber, examining each item. Among them, she found a small box containing old coins, each engraved with symbols she did not recognize. There were jars of herbs, powders, and even small vials of clear liquid. Instructions accompanied them, written in careful handwriting, explaining their use in rituals she could barely imagine. Then, in a corner of the chamber, she found something that made her pause. A large, sealed envelope addressed to her by name. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a key, along with a map of the surrounding area, marking places she had passed countless times without noticing. The letter read, Amina, the house was only the beginning. The wall you broke, the chambers you discovered, all lead to a larger truth. Our family has safeguarded knowledge, treasures, and secrets beyond this home. Some are hidden in plain sight, others are buried in the earth. You are now the guardian. You must protect these truths, but also prepare for what comes next. Danger may follow, but courage and wisdom will guide you. Trust yourself. Amina felt a chill. The gravity of what she had discovered was immense. She realized that the world she had known, her village, her friends, her simple life, was only one layer of reality. Beneath it lay a hidden network of guardians, knowledge, and history that had shaped her life without her realizing it. Determined to understand, she began to explore the map. Each location marked secrets tied to her husband's past, places where knowledge was stored, and clues left for her to follow. She understood that this journey would not be easy. There were risks, perhaps even dangers, but she also felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Days turned into weeks as Amina studied the books, practiced the instructions, and pieced together the hidden history of her husband's life. She learned about ancient practices meant to protect communities, symbols that carried messages through generations, and items that held power beyond ordinary understanding. The knowledge was complex, but Amina's determination grew with each passing day. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows across the chamber, she discovered a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside was a small, intricately carved chest. Her hands trembled as she opened it. There, resting on a velvet cloth, was a pendant, golden, engraved with symbols that seemed to move under her gaze. Amina put the pendant around her neck, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was as though a connection had been made, a link between her and the generations of guardians before her. She understood now that this was more than a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of responsibility, courage, and the truth she was meant to uphold. The final revelation came when she examined a series of letters Imran had left behind. They spoke of a secret he had carried even from her, a truth about why he had chosen her, why he had hidden the chambers, and why the wall had been so important. The letters revealed that she was part of the lineage he had protected, chosen not by blood but by virtue of her courage, intelligence, and heart. Tears filled her eyes as the weight of the realization sank in. Imran had trusted her with his life's work, his secrets, and the legacy of generations. He had known she would rise to the challenge, even when she had doubted herself. And now, she carried that responsibility. Amina stepped back from the table, looking around the chamber one last time. The house was no longer quiet or ordinary. It was alive with history, secrets, and purpose. She had been changed forever. The grief of the past 10 years transformed into resolve, clarity, and a sense of destiny. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. The world beyond the house seemed unchanged, ordinary, unaware of the secrets hidden within. But Amina knew that her life would never be ordinary again. She had uncovered the wall, the chambers, and the truths her husband had protected. She had embraced the legacy left for her, and with it, the courage to face whatever came next. The house, once a place of grief, was now a sanctuary of purpose. The hidden wall, the chambers, and the knowledge within had changed her life forever. Amina understood that the path ahead would be challenging, filled with mystery and discovery. But she also knew that she was ready. She was no longer the grieving widow she had been 10 years ago. She was the guardian of a legacy, the keeper of truths that would shape not only her life but the world around her. As she looked out the window at the fading light, Amina felt a sense of peace. She had lost Imran, but she had gained understanding, purpose, and strength. The house on the edge of the village, once a symbol of solitude and sorrow, had revealed its ultimate secret. Life is never as it seems, and the truths hidden in the shadows can transform even the quietest life into one of extraordinary meaning. Amina smiled softly, feeling Imran's presence in the room, not in the ordinary sense, but in the knowledge, the courage, and the love he had entrusted to her. She took a deep breath and whispered to the empty house, "I understand now. I will carry it forward." And with that, she stepped into the next chapter of her life, fully aware of the weight of the secrets she now protected, but also of the incredible power she had gained through courage, discovery, and love. The days after uncovering the hidden chamber passed in a blur of study and preparation. Amina spent hours poring over Imran's journals, deciphering the notes, diagrams, and coded messages. She discovered that the legacy her husband had left her was not merely a collection of secrets, it was a carefully constructed network of knowledge, artifacts, and wisdom intended to protect generations from forces that she had only begun to understand. Her first challenge was mastering the instructions Imran had left. Each jar, vial, and object had a purpose, and each symbol carried a weight she could not ignore. Amina practiced daily, testing the rituals in the small chamber she had come to call her sanctuary. Though her hands shook at first, repetition brought confidence. Slowly, she began to feel the flow of energy, a subtle force that seemed to connect the house, the objects, and herself. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, a knock echoed at the front door. Amina froze. Visitors were rare, and she had avoided neighbors for years. Cautiously, she approached and peeked through the window. A man stood outside, tall, with a calm yet serious expression. His clothing was simple, but his presence carried an air of purpose. "I'm looking for Amina," he said when she opened the door slightly. "I believe you've inherited something important." Her heart pounded. She didn't know this man, and yet, somehow, she felt she could trust him. She invited him inside, leading him to the living room, careful not to reveal the hidden chamber just yet. "My name is Rahim," he began. "I knew Imran. He entrusted me to watch over the legacy until it could be passed on. And now, it seems, the time has come for you." Amina listened, her mind racing. Rahim explained that the knowledge her husband had protected was part of a larger network of guardians, each responsible for safeguarding wisdom, artifacts, and secrets that had survived centuries. Some sought to misuse this knowledge, while others dedicated their lives to preserving balance and protecting communities from harm. "You are now part of this network," Rahim said. "Imran chose you because he knew you had the courage, the heart, and the intelligence to carry on the work. But it will not be easy. There are those who would come for what you now hold." Amina's breath caught. She had expected responsibility, yes, but danger too. Her hands tightened around the pendant her husband had left her. She realized she could no longer live quietly. Her life had changed entirely. Over the next few weeks, Rahim guided her through the larger aspects of her inheritance. She learned how to read the ancient scripts, how to identify hidden messages in ordinary objects, and how to protect herself and the knowledge she now carried. The house, once merely a home, became a fortress, a training ground, and a hub of discovery. Amina discovered that the hidden chamber was just one of many locations her husband had prepared. There were safe places in the forest, beneath the village, and in distant cities where more pieces of the legacy could be found. Each location held clues, artifacts, and records that, when combined, revealed a larger story, one that connected her family to centuries of guardianship. The more she learned, the more she realized how little she had understood of her husband's life. Imran had lived in two worlds, the ordinary and the extraordinary. For 10 years, she had thought she was alone, grieving quietly, but in truth, she had been on the threshold of something far greater. One night, as she worked in the chamber, she noticed a faint glow emanating from the pendant around her neck. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Amina held it in her hands, feeling the warmth spread through her body. The glow seemed to respond to her thoughts, guiding her attention to a particular book on the shelf. She opened it and gasped. The book contained records of a hidden location, far from the village, where generations of guardians had gathered once every decade to share knowledge and train new protectors. This was the next step, Imran had written. She must travel, learn, and connect with others who carried the same legacy. Amina felt a mix of fear and excitement. She would leave the house she had known, step into the wider world of guardians, and embrace a destiny she had never imagined. But she also felt ready. The grief, loneliness, and uncertainty of the past 10 years had transformed into courage, focus, and a deep understanding of her purpose. Before she could prepare, another knock echoed. This time, several figures appeared at the door. Each carried an air of purpose, and Amina recognized the symbols on their clothing, the same symbols she had seen in her husband's journals. They were guardians, like Rahim had said, come to guide her to the next stage of her journey. Amina welcomed them into the house, leading them to the hidden chamber. They examined the artifacts, books, and journals with reverence, nodding in approval as if confirming her readiness. "You have done well," Rahim said. 10 years ago, no one expected you to be here. But you have proven yourself, Amina. Now, the world beyond this house awaits. The path is not easy, but it is yours to walk. That night, Amina packed what she could carry, her journals, the pendant, and a few essential items from the hidden chamber. The house, once a place of solitude, now felt alive with purpose. Every corner, every wall, every secret passage seemed to watch her with approval. As the guardians led her into the forest, following a hidden path her husband had marked, Amina felt a sense of calm she had never known. She was no longer the grieving widow confined by sorrow and isolation. She was a protector, a guardian, a keeper of secrets that could shape the world. The journey ahead would be challenging. There would be mysteries, dangers, and choices that could test her resolve. But Amina was ready. She had discovered the truth hidden behind the wall, embraced the legacy her husband had entrusted to her, and stepped into a life filled with purpose, courage, and extraordinary meaning. As dawn broke over the village, casting light on the house she had called home for so long, Amina turned back one last time. She whispered a quiet farewell. "Thank you, Imran. I will carry it forward." And with that, she walked into the forest, guided by the pendant's glow, the knowledge of generations in her heart, and the courage to embrace a future she could never have imagined. For Amina, the wall she had broken 10 years after her husband's death had been the key, not just to a hidden chamber, but to her destiny. And as the sunlight touched the trees, she knew her life would never be the same again. The quiet house behind her remained, holding memories, secrets, and the echoes of a past that had led her to this moment. But Amina's eyes were fixed forward, ready to meet the extraordinary life that awaited her.